So in that case, you're talking about what an individual earns per year. So it's a salary. Um, so yes, it is about income and it is about individual income. But when they talk about a country's per capita income, they're talking about all of the money that's earned across an entire country divided by the number of people. Um, so yeah, so each person has only one
Per
head.
head.
So it's
Okay, yeah.
yeah. Per person, but that's on average. So some people are earning 10 times that much and some people are earning nothing. And they calculate these things differently depending on the metrics. Sometimes they exclude anyone who's not of working age and they exclude other categories as well. Yeah. What it do is it gives you a sense of like, is it a very wealthy country with a large population? Is it a wealthy country with a small population? Like how thinly might it be spread? But it's not the only way that you would decide whether it was a more equitable sharing out of that income. It's not just that kind of average. It would also be you would also, use like median um, could give you a good indication, median per capita income. Yeah, it implies people who dwell there. So I they probably mean legitimately. Um, so it could be citizens and temporary residents and permanent residents, but probably they probably can't count um, people who are in a country illegally. Yeah, but strictly speaking, inhabitants just means anyone who lives there. So they might include. Um, mm, they're comparing Brazil and Hungary. Um, so they're saying that their income levels per capita are comparable. They're comparable. They can be compared. They're on a similar level. Um, but but in Brazil, there's a lot more poverty, and it's for the reason that you mentioned. You know, there are some people who have a lot of money, and then many people have very little. In Brazil, whereas in Hungary, it's spread much more evenly. Mm. The the incidence of I think it's hard to use an antonym in this case because yeah, you could say that. You could say the incidence of poverty in Australia is higher than New Zealand. Um, you could talk about the incidence of wealth, but it's not a perfect opposite. Because I think in this discussion, poverty is they would have a very specific definition that they'd be using. Mm, mm. The you would usually have the incidence, then what it is an incidence of, then where it is. There is actually a typical order for um, these positional constructions. I can never remember it. Um, but there is a typical order when you're talking about, so incidence is a noun, and then you're adding to the noun group of this, in this, by these, um, group structure. Um, and see if I can pull it out of this book that I've got. I brought this book, is the verb, whereas of incidence here is the noun, which is modified by of poverty, which is a prepositional phrase that's packed into the noun group. So the pre-modifier is the, which is the definite article. Incidence is the head noun. Of poverty is the post modifier for that noun. And then in Brazil is another post modifier of that noun. And there's a particular order that we put those in. And I'm sure that there's a list of what conventional usage says. But the key thing is it has to be before the noun. Sorry, before the verb. It has to be before is. Yeah. You could say the incidence in Brazil of poverty, and it would still make sense. I just think the incidence of poverty in Brazil is better. Thinking you're imagining that incidence, that there are some bits of information that you want to add that are essential, and then there are bits of information that you want to add that are more about its situation or its location. So the fact that it's an incidence of poverty, that's essential to what you're talking about here. That it's in Brazil is it's not about the core concept you're using. It's about its location in space or time. So we can put that after. But there would definitely be a formula for prepositional post modifications in the order that they always come in. I'm just not sure where it is. Yeah, gross national product or gross national income or there's a few different measures of yeah, 1.5 trillion, yeah. Yes, I think so. That's really telling us something about the size of the economy, the size and value of the economy. Um, but then how evenly that's distributed is a different question. So I would say, for example, that Austria um, probably has a more even division of its smaller economy, and Canada may have a less even division of its larger economy. I think there's been um, a boom, but it's not been evenly distributed. Number of people have made a lot more money in the last 2 years. Not making more money, but a small number of people in countries like Australia and Canada have made a lot more money. So when we're looking at that uptick there in that huge that change of rate of growth there, what we're looking at is only a handful of people have probably made billions of dollars in that time, and that the other gains would be, if there are any, would be shared very thinly across the rest of the population. Yeah.